How's it going, everyone? Welcome to Giny Arts. I'm Giny, and today we're learning how to draw a realistic puppy step by step. As usual, the reference image is in the description, so without wasting any more time, let's get into the video. So, since I don't usually draw dogs, I needed a bit more of an accurate initial sketch. So to do that, I used the grid method, and if you're not familiar with it, it's basically draw a grid onto your reference image and the same grid onto your paper, and the grid just makes it easier to copy the image. So yeah, once I had that, I removed the grid from around the dog itself, and then I used an indentation tool to indent the paper in the places where the lightest fur was. When I had the lightest fur indented in my paper, I decided to take an HB pencil and lightly sketch where the fur is and what direction it is flowing. So I just went over the whole image, following the reference image, and marked everything out. When you're indenting, make sure that you have indented the place above the eye, because there the fur is really light and it's really easy to lose the highlights while drawing the actual eye. So yeah, just make sure you indent the hairs going over the eye a bit, as you can see in the video. Now, once we have all of that done, I started to shade in the pupil. It's really simple. I'm sorry, not the pupil, the actual eye itself. So yeah, it's really simple. All I did was mark out some places where I saw the highlights in the image, and then I shaded everything more or less the same shade, just making sure that the edges of it were a bit darker. This made everything a bit more of 3D. So yeah. So once you have all of that done, just blend it gently and make sure not to lose the highlights. So now that we have that done, we need to shade the corners of the eye. Make sure that the left one is significantly darker than the right one. Now, once that's done, we can move on to shading the fur. Now, since we have the paper indented, it's a bit different. Basically, we have to cross-hatch the first layer, meaning that if the indented line is going horizontally, we have to shade over the area vertically. So yeah, but this is just for the first layer. Now, once we have that done, I just decided to move around the eye, adding the same layer all over that area. Make sure that there's a tiny line around the eye that's a bit darker than the rest of the fur. So yeah, just try to add a bit more value to it. Once you have the first layer down, just take a harder pencil like 4B or even an 8B and just try to add some individual fur lines. Then go over everything with a blending tool. Go over it with an eraser to add a bit more details, and repeat this process until you have the desired look. Now, when that's done, I decided to take some portions of the image and indent the fur into it. The reason I'm not indenting the whole image at once is because it's really easy to get confused and indentations are not reversible. So I think it's crucial to really think how the hair is flowing, the direction that it's flowing to, also the shape of the hair, how it clumps up. Just take all of this into consideration before indenting, because, well, as I said, if you make an indentation, you cannot bring it back. Well, it's not just graphite on paper anymore. So yeah. So once I have that done, and this goes for the whole image in general, I just use different portions of it. Basically, I just went over the whole thing with a really light shade of gray, added some lines with an eraser, and then according to the part that I'm drawing in, if it's around the nose or the eye, it's a bit more detailed, but if we're going to the cheek or the chin, it doesn't have as much details and it's a bit more, well, blended, if I can say that. So yeah, depending on the area that you're working on, just add more or less details with a harder pencil. Again, just repeat the whole process of light pencil, eraser, then a harder pencil, blending, eraser, and just, well, repeat this until you have the desired look. For the area around the nose, you can add tiny sort of dots just to get a bit more texture. It's a bit of a trickier one, but I'm sure you can do it. Just make sure that you indented the outlines of the actual image, because, well, we're gonna add a dark background to make everything pop a bit more, so you need to have that white fur going, well, kind of reflecting, or even, I think it's called a blick, so yeah, but you need to have that white fur visible once we have the dark background. So yeah, just indent everything beforehand. Okay, so now we can move on to the nose. The nose is quite tricky. I really recommend starting with the center line. Well, you can't really say it's in the center, but it's like the center line that you see if you're looking straight into the dog's face. So yeah, just draw that really hard line. It's really visible. And then make sure that the nostrils are pitch black, and the rest of it is just basically sculpting the whole structure of the nose, the shape of the nose. Really look into where the darkest parts are and where the lightest parts are. So yeah, once you have that, then take either a Tombow Zero eraser, an electrical eraser that I actually used, or a pen eraser. Well, basically something that's really small but works really well, and just add some tiny dots around the whole area of around the whole nose area. And then what you have to do is gently blend it with the blending tool and add a bit more of the shade, well, not the shade, the graphite to it, and basically repeat this process 2 to 3 times just until you get this overall nose texture. Don't overdo it because it will look like an Easter egg, and you don't want that. It's just a dog nose. So yeah, make sure that you have the texture in. It's blended, it's not like glowing white. You have the highlights in. You have the darkest areas and the lightest ones. Yeah, just like look at all of that. Now for the area where the upper jaw meets the bottom jaw, well, more like upper lip goes over the bottom jaw, just make sure that you have the hairs of the upper lip indented in advance, and then go over it with a really hard pencil. I used a 12B. If you don't have that, just use 8B or any darkest pencil, well, softest pencil that you have. So yeah, just make that line, it will show the shadow. Then just shade the chin area, leaving a small, barely visible, sort of highlighted line at the edge of the image. This is where the fur meets the background. Drawing the ear was quite tricky. The trickiest part for me was capturing the fur on the left side, and as you can see, I went over it with an eraser so many times just trying to redraw it. But yeah, start off by indenting some portions of the ear. Try to draw it in sort of like drop shapes. Well, not draw it, indent it in sort of like drop shapes. As you can see in the photo, try to mimic the flow of the fur. For me, this was really tricky. I didn't get the best version of it, but I'm pretty satisfied with the results. So yeah, just indent portions of the ear prior. Just add a lot of attention to the upper left side because it has longer fur and it's a bit more difficult to draw. So yeah, once you have that, just use a softer pencil and start going in, drawing individual hairs, shading some clumps of the fur, going over everything with a blending tool, and then just erase some portions as highlights. and repeat this process, I don't know, 5, 10, 20 times, just as much as you need until you're satisfied with the results. Please take your time on this, because if you have the whole drawing looking amazing and just leave the ear unfinished, it will just look weird and you want a good product. So yeah, just take your time with it. And note that the ear is significantly darker than the rest of the dog, so don't be afraid to add a bit more shade to it. Now, for the background, you can shade it in any way you want. Personally, I tried using cotton wool for the first time and I'm really satisfied with it. I started off by just outlining the dog. In the beginning you won't see the whole outline, but for the rest of the image, once I have everything more or less done, I outlined the whole dog, and then sketched in some shading. Well, sketched and I tried to shade with a pencil a bit, and then I realized that it won't be as clear as I want. Well, I will see the streaks of the pencil, so I decided to use graphite powder. I just added some to the paper and just using circular motions kind of rubbed it into the paper with cotton wool. It takes time, it's messy, but the background you get is so soft, so smooth, it's totally worth it. So yeah, just go over the background. You can do the whole background in advance. I did it later, just got the initial color of it. But yeah, it's up to you. Either you do it now, either you do the whole background right now, or you do parts like I did. Now, when I finished the ear, I just got back to finishing the rest of the head of the dog, and I just used the same technique with indentation, shading, erasing, and blending. I think it worked really well. And as for the finishing touches, well, first of all, I finished the background. I really took my time on it. It was quite messy. I think it turned out really good though. So yeah, but after I had the initial drawing done more or less, and once I had the background done, I decided to take a harder pencil, sharpen it, not harder, a softer pencil, like 8B, I believe. I sharpened it really well, and I added some more values to the whole image. I just went over some areas, looked where I needed more contrast. So for example, around the eyes, the whole area is a bit darker, so I added that. There's also sort of a semicircle above the eye. I think it represents the eyelids, so yeah, I made sure that that's visible. Around the nose, it's a bit darker, so I added that. I darkened up the areas underneath the ear, and I made sure that the bridge of the nose was really visible by erasing some of the graphite and adding some shadows, if I can say that. So yeah, I just went over the whole image, added some finishing touches, and yeah, so this part is really individual. It's different for everyone. If you feel that you do not need to add any finishing touches, just don't. If you're happy with your drawing, consider it finished, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe, and comment down below what you'd like to see me draw next week. And I'll see you guys soon.